Right boys, so in this video we're going to talk about the pain-pleasure response in the brain and how it relates to compulsive and addictive behaviours. So some of the information I'm talking about is going to come from Dr Anna Lembke's book Dopamine Nation, and I'll do a full summary on that in the future. And it's actually I was surprised at that book. It's very scientific and practical, but there is kind of a spiritual element to it if you look at it in that lens. So that's an interesting one to talk about. But today I'm going to talk about, this will give us a good frame of reference for talking about that book, but I'm going to discuss 3 common phrases that you've probably heard of, and they come from thermodynamics, physics and hermetic texts. And the hermetic texts are ancient Greek and Egyptian texts from the Emerald Tablets, but I'll describe that when I talk about it. So we'll discuss those 3 phrases, and then we're going to use a tool which is like a graph, which I'll show you, that can help you navigate the world using the philosophy we'll learn about with the pain and pleasure response. So this is going to relate to very practical advice, and then it goes very spiritual as well, so depending on what lens you look at it through. So we'll discuss the 3 phrases, we'll learn the tool, which is the graph, and then we'll talk about the spiritual implications of it. And it's just a good tool to help you navigate through your life. So this can help you live a spiritual life and just avoid addictive behaviours. So it's very there's a duality to it. It can be very simple or very deep. So this is going to kind of act as a map of reality. So this is one way of explaining the nature of reality. So something Paul Chek says is that God already has your optimal path for spiritual growth mapped out before you get here. So this up and down is causing you to learn lessons that you will either learn or not learn in the course of your lifetime. And the learning is just either getting close to that middle line or reaching enlightenment. But as me and my friend have kind of discussed, that's probably not the goal. You want to hit that middle line, the middle way. So the first of the 3 phrases is the first law of thermodynamics, or the law of energy conservation. Energy cannot be created or destroyed in an isolated system. Instead, it can only change forms or be transformed from one form to another. The total energy of a closed system remains constant over time. So you can think of the human brain or the human body or the human lifespan as a closed system. So we're dealing with energy within that closed system. So just bear that in mind when we sort of discuss this model. And then phrase number 2, and this is the 3rd law of physics, Newton's 3rd law of motion. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and you could say that as what goes up must come down. So again, this is quite a common thing that you've heard of and you kind of understand. And then the 3rd, this comes from the hermetic text, as above so below. Originates from the ancient hermetic teachings, which are the texts called the Emerald Tablets. What happens on a higher macrocosmic level mirrors what happens on a lower microcosmic level, implying unity and interconnectedness in the universe. Hermetica is Egyptian and Greek, unity of the divine and material. So that's where it becomes more spiritual. So the other 2 will understand dopamine and the pain-pleasure response in the brain, and they're very scientific, but this is also very spiritual and religious. So what happens on a grand scale is also happening within your body, so it can help you understand the world and reality. So we'll head indoors and I'll show you the mental model that we use, the tool, the graph. So let's get into it. So this is our mental model to visualize the pain-pleasure response. So earlier we talked about the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, just changed form. So pain and pleasure, we can think of those as emotions. And emotions are energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion. So let's figure out what we got. So down the bottom, this from 0 to 10 is pain, indifference and pleasure. So it starts off the most pain you can experience, and then we got black, which represents death. 10 is the most pleasure you can experience, and then that's represented by the white. And then this middle line is baseline. So this is, I've just used an arbitrary number of 5, but baseline is the middle path between pain and pleasure. And the Taoists would call that the middle way, or the Tao, and that's represented by the yin yang. So you got dark is bad, light is good, and then the middle path, right? So anytime you have a stimulus, you can represent this on the graph. So we take this one. So this is what a normal pleasure response looks like to something basic like food. So you're at baseline, you eat a nice meal, nothing too crazy, not hyperpalatable or ultra processed. This is just a normal, real food. It spikes you into the pleasure, so you've gone from baseline into pleasure, and then every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You dip back down. You don't just come to baseline, you actually come slightly below baseline. So you'll probably notice when you eat, say, a nice Christmas dinner, you have that kind of lethargic feeling afterwards. So you're not baseline, you're slightly worse off than baseline, but that's normal. So you've had the reward, and then there's a dip below baseline, and this is in Anna Lembke's book, and it's equal and opposite, and then you'll come back up, and because you was below baseline, you kind of go above baseline again, and then it levels out, and then you might have another meal, and it happens again. But you're never straying too far from the middle line, so you come up and down, but within this sort of region. You're not having crazy swings. So that is normal. You'll be at baseline, you'll eat a normal meal, so a hyperpalatable meal with processed foods and a lot of sugar might spike you really high, and then you get that sugar crash. Whereas this is normal stimulus. So that's the first one. So then this is a bit more of a supernatural stimulus. So this would be something like a drug, or sugar is as addictive as some illegal drugs. So you are at baseline. Normally people that take drugs aren't at baseline, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So you're at baseline, you take the drug or the hyperpalatable food, or this could be porn or anything that is unnaturally stimulating. It gives you a massive spike, almost up to the 10. That's almost a peak experience. And this could be anything. This could be a woman or a life experience or a drug or something like that, but it's hyper stimulating, gets you right to the top of pleasure, and then you pay the price, you come back down. Now men will know after you have sex you experience this, so you get the pleasure and then you get kind of that depression afterwards, and we're kind of used to that, I think. And then again, so equal and opposite, you had the pleasure, you had the pain, and then it levels out. So this would be a normal response to a very high level stimulus. So this, you could even take a drug and recover from it. So this is why not everybody that takes drugs become addicts. So you got the high response, and then that's your natural leveling out to baseline. Now this one we've got, this is somebody that takes the same drug as the previous one, but on this half they're addicted and on this half they recover. So you're at baseline, you take the drug, you get the massive spike, you come back down into pain, and then because the discrepancy between the high you've just experienced and the pain you're in now, You want to alleviate that as quick as possible, and it may not seem like if you just wait you'll get back to baseline. So what do? You take another drug, but if you look at the size of the upswing is the same from there to there as it is from there to there. But this time, because you were so low in the pain side, it hasn't brought you near the 10. It hasn't give you that peak experience. It's just give you basically just above baseline. So now you're using that drug to just feel normal rather than feeling amazing. So then you take the drug, you feel okay, but then you get the downswing, and then that becomes a perpetual cycle where you constantly are just doing that to get to normal. So this might be the case with an overeating situation, but the swings are slightly smaller. So you're at baseline, you overeat, you then feel bad, and then you overeat to compensate, but you're not at baseline. You would naturally be sitting down here, and we'll go into that in a sec. So once you've recognised that, say this drug addict wants to now stop taking the drug. Oh yeah, so I should have mentioned this is time. So this is time passing. This is pain and pleasure, and this is over time. So now at this point, the drug addict has gone below the zero. And that's when you start getting very deep, dark thoughts. So that could be people thinking that they want to unalive themselves and things like that. So that's down to zero. And then to recover, you have to come back up to baseline and then allow yourself to go down into pain again. And see all of this whole process here is below baseline. So this person is in pain constantly over time, but slowly they recover back to baseline. But this is very difficult to do, and people want to just take substances or things that are going to alleviate it and put them back into pleasure. So then this one's probably a little bit more relatable. So this is the happy fat guy, or the person that's addicted to social media on their phone. This is the average person. So this is probably going to be me and you. So you start off at baseline. You're not heavily addicted to drugs or whatever. So you start at baseline. You eat some nice palatable food, or you go on your phone and check social media, or you're on Instagram looking at tits and arse. I don't know what it is, the thing that you do, but you do the stimulus and it makes you feel good. Then you start to come down a little bit, or you're a little bit bored at the bus stop, so you check your phone again. Oh, and you feel good. You spike up into the the pleasure response. Then again, a couple of hours has passed, you get a bit bored, you check your phone again. And now it's lunchtime, you're feeling a little bit tired and hungry, and then you have a meal. And instead of being at baseline, we're above baseline in the pleasure. So this is like borrowed pleasure. And then you fluctuate around here. This is why you're happier potentially when you're eating the sugary foods, because you're constantly spiking happiness and then dipping down and then spiking again. And then here you might have had a meal and it spikes you up, and instead of waiting for it to level out, you have a dessert like an hour later, and then it spikes you up even further into more pleasure. But then the dip down, equal and opposite, is going to be lower. So, and then here again you do something else. That could be another meal, or on your phone, or having sex with your partner. You go back into pleasure, and then again the dip, but now you're below baseline, and then again you compensate, and you just carry on. And most people live their lives, because everyone wants to feel good, they live their lives above baseline, so they're getting more stimulus and happiness. Like my friend uses Monster Energy to do this, so he's constantly spiking and feeling good, but it's an artificial baseline. So this person's baseline looks like it's about there, but that's artificial because they're using these stimulus to keep them up there. Now that's fine, but over a sustained period of time this becomes weight gain. So if you're constantly using hyperpalatable foods which are higher than your caloric requirement, that over time is going to cause you to gain weight. And the process of undereating and trying to lose weight is just a mirror image of this. This is going to be down here. So you could flip this over. So you're at baseline, you undereat on this meal and it makes you feel a little bit bad, and then you constantly undereat, you're in a calorie deficit over a sustained period of time, you're in the pain, you're slightly pain, but then you could end up back at baseline, and this is the process of losing weight, whereas the opposite was the process of gaining weight. Now the opposite is also true. So I've used the example of a cold shower. So if you choose to put yourself in the pain, so this could be a cold shower, a workout, or meditation, you're at baseline and you choose to do something hard. Again, that could be a normal real food meal, which is not as palatable as you'd normally eat. You're putting yourself into the pain on purpose, and then the equal and opposite force is going to bring you back up into pleasure. Now, if you do these habits over and over, your trajectory is going to put you higher up into the pleasure. So your baseline is essentially going to lift. And then what I believe enlightenment is, so if you've got the dark and then the light, so this is the enlightenment level. If you're at baseline and you're not attached to pain or pleasure, so say you just sit and meditate, so this is one common way of trying to reach enlightenment. If you just meditate constantly, instead of your baseline being along like that, it's going to go up, so that basically no stimulus is required to give you more pleasure. So enlightenment could just be the point at which you need no stimulation to have a 10 pleasure response, a peak experience with zero stimulation. So if you just sit and meditate, and a lot of these, the Buddhist teachings say that you have to do this for multiple lifetimes. So say you just do this for 100 lifetimes over and over, sitting and meditating under a tree. Eventually you'll get to the point where just sitting and meditating, just breathing, gives you a peak experience, whereas the average person needs like cocaine or something to do that. So I just thought that was interesting. I think that is where this enlightenment path comes in. So on a basic level, we can use this as a kind of scale to help us navigate whether we're overdoing certain habits. So we can avoid addiction by going, where am I on the scale? So if you have an addiction and you're using it to feel good, you just have to wait a certain period of time in the pain, and dwelling in the pain is difficult and nobody wants to do it, but this is how you recover. So slowly over time you come back to normal, and it's equal and opposite. So the amount of time you was living in pleasure is probably going to be the amount of time it takes you to come back. And so the average lifetime, so this can also be a representation of your life. So if you think about it, the way we normally live is we're born, we have some life experiences, some are good, some are bad, and we learn from them, and then we kind of level out for a bit, and then we have some good, some bad, and we just repeat this over and over throughout our whole life. Now, Paul Chek says that God has the path for our ultimate spiritual progression already mapped out for us. So what the ideal spiritual path would look like is you're born, you have a lot of positive, a lot of negative, you progressively learn from it, and then you learn all of your lessons, and then you end up at baseline, and then that kind of continues. But that isn't the case. It comes and goes. It comes and goes like this. We have some good, some bad, then it gets a bit boring, and then we have something else. And some of these big swings, they're kind of they're predictable life events. So that's what a midlife crisis would be. It would be, oh yeah, I've been in pleasure for a bit, and then all of a sudden at around 40, something, you split up with your girlfriend or your wife, or something happens, you get a divorce, and then bang, you're in pain. And now the midlife crisis is, what fancy car, what motorbike do I have to buy to get me back into pleasure? And then obviously you're going to be bouncing around. So this is quite deep. It's going to help you avoid that donut, and it's going to help you map out how to recover from certain pain or pleasure responses in life. So this is where the spirituality of it comes in. So I take the model, and you can apply all of these religious and spiritual terms to it. So you've got light and dark, the middle way. You've got heaven and hell, and purgatory is in the middle, because sometimes you're good, sometimes you're bad. You've got love is in this area, and hate is down here. This would be mental illness. And then, like I say, we've got the middle way, or the Tao, goes through the middle. You got God and the devil, virtue and sin. So it all ends up somewhere on this scale. So this whole section is kind of a dark, shaded section, and then this is light. And then here I've got a ladder, which is certain points, things you might be into, so like witchcraft or popular music, they all fall somewhere on this scale from 0 to 10, right? So I've put meditation is in the light side, and you can tell whether the thing you're doing is above the baseline or below, because everything above the baseline is basically boring, and it's reality, right? So it's very boring. So if you take Buddha meditating under a tree, that's very boring. Whereas things in this dark down below area are very exciting, and they're not quite reality. So I'm not keen on Sam Smith, right? A lot of his music videos have a lot of devil worship kind of imagery associated with it. But that's very exciting. If you look at his shows, what would you rather watch? Buddha sat under a tree for 30 years straight, or Sam Smith running around singing songs? Because some of his songs are catchy and I'll find myself singing them. But this realm is boring and it's reality. This realm is exciting and it's not reality. So take Sam Smith, for example. I'm pretty sure he's either a man or a woman, but he's in interviews saying he's not, So down here you can say there's more than two genders. I'm of the belief that there's men and women, and that I operate in reality. I don't operate in the exciting realm of non-reality. So for me to say there's more than two genders, in fact there's 64, I would have to be down here because that's exciting. To just say it how it is, say reality, two genders, is boring. We've been doing that for a long time. But Sam Smith can get attention in interviews because it's exciting. And I would personally call that a mental illness. If you're an adult who has, been through the schooling system, not even the schooling system, if you're just an adult with logical reasoning, and you believe that there are more than two genders, that to me is a mental illness. So anyone that's purporting that, it's exciting and it's not real, as far as I can tell. So now I might be wrong, but I've only ever seen two genders. So, and there are certain things in life that fall down here. So popular music definitely falls in this category. Now this again is a bit conspiracy theory, but I don't believe there's any conspiracy about it. Popular music has a lot of devil worship and Satanism associated with it. And that's dark and that's down here. So, whereas up here, classical music would form in here. So any music that doesn't have lyrics usually ends up here. So a lot of Indian music is the same. So I've got tattoos down here. Now I have a lot of tattoos. And what I noticed was when I was researching for tattoos, all tattoo parlours have 666 or 13 or these like unlucky things associated with them. So it might be, when I was looking to get my tattoos, every tattoo parlour had like 666 in the name. Or if you look at their flash designs, so designs you can get, they've all got the devil or skull and crossbones. Very rarely did I come across a tattoo parlour that had, you know, Jesus as one of the flash designs that you can just pick. There's like bats, and just have a look at tattoo parlours and the kind of imagery. It might be spiders on spiders' webs, very dark imagery. And all of my tattoos actually are the opposite. That's why it was quite strange when I was choosing my tattoos, because I operate in this realm, the light realm, and I've got like a dove, I've got the word love tattooed on me, I've got everything that represents, I've got the yin yang, this top, and I had to go to a tattoo artist, which is, again, even the act of getting a tattoo is inflicting pain. It's not a pleasure response. So yeah, like I say, everything down here, and it's exciting to get tattoos. It's almost addictive. But if you want to operate in this realm, this is the light on a spiritual level. So pain and pleasure aside, I see this as a spiritual thing. So we've got messing with Ouija boards would be down here. That's not a light activity, that's a dark activity. A lot of women are into witchcraft. Now, I personally would say that is below baseline in terms of spiritual light to dark. Psychedelic drugs, I was very interested in the effects that psychedelics have on the brain. And I've had some personal experiences, but I would put that in this dangerous dark side. I wouldn't put that in the light. You can get the same effects by meditating and being in reality. So even things that I'm interested in, I've had to objectively look at and see that they're down here. So you got Satanism, devil worship, popular music, witchcraft is all down here. And then up here you've got meditation, the Tao Te Ching, the Bible, the Quran, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and the list goes on, and the same for down here. So you can operate in either side. So this is darkness, this is light, this would be death, and this would be life. So if you took somebody's life, you're operating on this very dark realm. I guess having children would be the opposite of that. Bringing life into this world is a very light activity. So everyone will universally condemn the person that takes somebody else's life. And if you like walk through a park with a small child, everybody like smiles at you and looks at you, like everyone accepts that that's good. So birth and death. So to bring it full circle and go fully deep with the spirituality side of it, this is kind of why I believe in reincarnation, right? So if you say that this is birth, there was, you know, you're brought into this world, that's the ultimate, that's like the ultimate spiritual attainment in this life, creating life. So you create life and you come down to baseline, that's a new life. You live your life and you make mistakes, pain and pleasure, some good, some bad, and then you die. Well, in a closed system, energy cannot be created or destroyed, just changed form. So you die, and then you come back into life and go again. So that's why I just see it as a cycle of you're born, you live, you die, you're born, you live. So that's why I believe in reincarnation, because I don't think there's any end. Why would it just stop there and then not go again? So I don't know if I explained that very well, but so yeah, that's the model I use as a way of navigating reality. And now, whenever I'm in pain, I can very clearly see what I've got to do, which is to get me back to baseline. And your goal, The problem with this is when you have a heightened experience, so say you split up with your girlfriend, right? You're very happy when you're with her, and now down here you're in a lot of pain, and it's because you're comparing where you are now to the pleasure instead of comparing it to the baseline. This is the goal. The goal isn't to get back up here. This is why people have rebound relationships, because it was very pleasurable. Now you're in pain, and then they just rebound to another girl, and now you're up here again. But that's not the goal. The goal is to get back to baseline, and it's actually half the distance. So from here to here is huge. From here to here is half the distance. So you want to protect your baseline at all costs. And the more spiritually advanced you get, the less you're interested in big swings. So even when you get, say, your next girlfriend, it's not going to be a heightened... You want to keep it as close, the middle way. And this is why the Taoists say you act without the outcome. So you act in a way that you're not dependent on the outcome, because you're just middle way. You don't know if it's good, you don't know if it's bad, but you just go with reality and go with nature. So this is the path to go for. So I hope I've explained that. I hope that makes sense. So something else I did mean to mention is, me and my friend was talking about this yesterday, and we've kind of come to the conclusion, or at least I came to this conclusion, that the things start to get weird when you're at one extreme or the other. So this is normal reality, and say you're going for enlightenment. Now there are a few people that have reached enlightenment. Alan Watts, I believe, is one of them. So he was an enlightened person, but he ended up being an alcoholic, and I believe the circumstances around his death were a little bit questionable, and I believe he took his own life. And I think you can't operate at this experience in a physical body, so you have to give up your physical body in one way or another. And monks, I've seen a video of a monk who left his body, he physically left his body on demand, essentially. So I don't think you can stay up here enlightened at a 10 in a physical body. And things start to get weird. So up here you've got Catholic priests that are doing questionable things with children. You got the Dalai Lama. I saw a video of him doing something a little bit sketchy with a little boy. So if you operate at good, at the high end of the spectrum for so long, I think the natural balance, like we've said, what goes up must come down. So that's why when you see these weird news stories, I think that's what's going on. You can't stay there forever. You end up bouncing back and forth. And I would imagine the same's true down here. There's people like Hitler, for example. What he did was very bad, and then every now and then I'll hear a really good quality he had. So it works both ways. So boys, I hope that helps you manage pain and pleasure and addictive behaviours, and also help you navigate life in its entirety. So hope that helps. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.